fortunate today to have Gunnar Hand here from SOM. He is going to tell us the basics of PowerPoint. PowerPoint is pretty ubiquitous, I feel like, in our industry, and so it's always nice to have someone who's got a really talented eye for these types of things, give some tips and strategies for how we can bring it into the work we're doing better and understand how the tool works. So if you already are pretty proficient at PowerPoint, this may be too basic, I don't know. But maybe we'll have time for questions and answers and people can weigh in with their own ideas. How many people here have never used PowerPoint? Okay. And how many people here have used it but only occasionally? Okay. So just to give Gunnar a sense of who he's dealing with here. So does Gunnar need this or should I turn this?
You can hear me, right? I prefer to project.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gunnar.
It goes with my imposing stature if I speak loudly. Again, so thank you, Bridget, and thanks for having me here today. Again, my name's Gunnar Hand. I am with the offices of Skidmore, Owens & Merrill. We just opened a downtown office about 4 or 5 years ago. I run the city design practice. So you might be asking yourself, what is a guy from SOM doing at LADOT? Well, it just so happens that my wife is the Goldhirsch Fellow for the last year, next 6 months-ish. Developing the transportation technology strategy for the department. And so there is 2 degrees of separation, I suppose, and that's all it takes. So again, as Bridget said, I'm going to go over kind of high level what I'm thinking when I'm putting together a PowerPoint presentation, and if you can pick up any tricks or tips on it, I'd be more than happy to convey those to you. I will leave a copy of this with you all so you can look through my PowerPoint as a reference in the future. There's a reason I did not provide handouts, because when you're doing a PowerPoint, you should be captivating enough that people don't need to flip through their handouts and should be paying attention to you. I will also make the quick note that we have an hour, but this should probably take me no more than 15 minutes, which is also built-in lesson for PowerPoint presentations. They should be quick and relatively painless. So here's the kind of agenda for the day. I'll go over purpose, a couple templates, a couple tricks and trades, a couple thoughts that I have, where I go to source a lot of my images and other icons and things of that nature, which you can do as well. It's free and all open source. So we'll go through all that. And hopefully, in the process, we'll have a little fun, right? PowerPoint presentations? All right. So the purpose. This is essentially a tool, right? To help communicate and deliver information. It is not something that you want to ever turn around and read what you're doing. So the way I use PowerPoint is this is just a cue for me to talk about the things that I want to talk about. So hopefully, if you gather any lesson today, it's that this is just a tool to make you a better presenter. It is not anything above and beyond that. And I'll go into a little more detail about what that means moving forward. This presentation is not a PowerPoint tutorial. So if you want to ask me a little bit about technical things here, there, and the other, my general answer is going to be, if you can't figure out how to use the software itself, you shouldn't be using those buttons anyway, because most of it is pretty straightforward. And the clearer, more concise, and simple the PowerPoint presentation, the better. Once you start adding in all that stuff, that's when it gets cluttered. That's when it takes a long time to put them together, which it doesn't need to take a long time to put them together, and it's pretty easy. So it's not a PowerPoint tutorial. Templates. I think this is where I introduce the brand new LADOT template. So if you have questions about fonts, positioning of images, how to put things together, well, guess what? You've already got one built in for you. And you just need to use it. So this, for instance, is kind of the SOM template. I am no graphic designer by any way, shape, or form. There's about 52 different variations of this slide that they give us that I had to choose from. Other than making that decision, templates is where it's at. There's no reason to go outside this template. It creates a unified front for you guys when you're talking internally to City Hall or in the public. So everybody kind of gets a look and feel of the, does this pointer work? Yes, of the LADOT brand. Question, let's do it.
I just want to make a comment. We are going to be deploying this template in about 3-4 weeks. None of them have seen this. Like, what's coming up?
So this is it. In the works, coming out. So that is your font. And these are your templates. Pretty cool. So again, I want to just really kind of go over some of these resources, and I have the websites up here before. Has anybody ever heard of Noun Project? Ooh, this website is invaluable. There's probably 1 million+ different little icons. So when you're talking about infographics, graphic design, or just putting something together really, really quick, it's a really great resource to, this is kind of my smart city image, right? Where you can just lay it right in and drop it in pretty easily. Doesn't take any brain power. They give them to you in PNGs. If you don't know what that means basically it'll drop back with no background. So you don't have to get rid of the white. You don't have to go into Photoshop or do any other kind of stuff. And usually, not all the time, but usually they're all free, but they make you kind of cite who made it. But as you can see, you can vary that, and so it doesn't ever really impact what you want to do. So Noun Project, write down that website. People love icons in PowerPoint presentations. Next one, Flickr. So I'm sure you guys probably have a whole host of like photo stocks that you can draw information from, but one of the fastest ways to get any kind of image that you have popped in your head, usually when I'm putting together a PowerPoint, I go, oh, I want an image of this. I can search and within a couple of minutes probably find what I'm looking for on Flickr. The one caveat for Flickr is you got to go to the Commons. It's a pull down tab. There's like a list of 12 different categories of images you can pull from. All of them require you to cite it unless it's housed on the Commons. You can use any of these images open source for free without citing anybody. And I'll tell you, there's millions of icons on Noun Project. There's millions of pictures, more and more every day on Flickr.
DOT has the bike police stuff is on Flickr.
Yep. So a lot of governments post their images on Flickr too, so you can go and find all that. So that's how I use Flickr. Have you guys ever seen Street Mix? Yeah. Some of you have, some of you may have not. If you haven't, go to streetmix.net. This is a super fun site, and a lot of my planner friends geek out about this like daily. Whenever we want to come up with our own sort of scheme of how we see somewhere LA road, right? Pick your poison. What's the road of the day? Great streets, Central Avenue, whatever. Wilshire, you name it. You can piece it together. You get to pick like the width of the roadway, and then you can build whatever you want within that right of way. So super cool. It's a really great engagement tool that we've used. So I don't know if you guys want to get into the engagement game necessarily, but this is another great tool. So let's say you build your road, right? And you can do 4 or 5 different variations. Very easily it'll allow you to save a JPEG, pop it right into PowerPoint. You got 4 different schemes of how you can potentially use a right of way. So I thought that was a little relevant to LADOT. I thought I'd throw that one in there. I love this one. Super fun project site. That's me adding streetcar somewhere in Los Angeles. Anybody? Anybody? It's a game of chicken, right? You or Metro. Who's going to do it? Who's going to do it?
Is that Broadway or somewhere else?
It could be anywhere. As we all know, most of the streets in Los Angeles were once streetcar corridors. Okay, so these are just kind of, again, my tricks and tips, and I think if we want to expand on this during question and answer, that's more than okay with me, and I'll answer what I can when we get to there. But I just wanted to kind of talk about a few of them real quick. So this is not in your template, but I'm a big believer in full bleed images. If you've seen any of my wife's presentations, I believe she gave one a couple months ago, she mostly uses full bleed to great effect, because the thing you don't want to do in a PowerPoint presentation is write down text. This is all about evoking a feeling and conveying a message. And so how do you do that the right way? Well, a picture says 1,000 words, right? So full bleeds are great. I like to use personal photos when I can. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I was in Kansas City, Missouri the summer after the May tornado in Joplin, Missouri. So this is a picture I took in Joplin, Missouri. I used to live and work in Joplin, and that right over here was my apartment complex. So see, I got to tell a really personal story, connect with the audience right then and there. Personal photos are great too. When you are taking personal photos though, like a lot of people just use camera phones now, right? Most camera phones get 4 to 5 megabytes, so it's more than enough resolution. This was taken from my phone. I think it's pretty clear. It's a relatively blank wall. Thank you, Whole Foods in downtown. But you want to think about how you're framing it, right? So you guys probably don't want to get involved in getting into into Photoshop and moving images around and doing all that kind of stuff. So when you're taking your photo, just think about where you want to put the title and where you want to put any sort of drop-down text. And you can frame your own images as you're taking them, and then you can drop them right into PowerPoint. Super easy, super quick, just a kind of thought. And you don't have to be an expert, right? But you do have to use caution. I think we all have plenty of these on our phones. Renderings are great too. I don't know how much you guys get into developing renderings, or if you use some sub-consultant renderings and other presentations or whatnot, but this is, again, renderings are a great way to do 2 things: sell an image, right? but also kind of have an explanation. This is a green street that SOM did in China. Infographics are great too. I don't know if you guys are getting into the infographic game, but it's the same sort of thing. Imagine if these were some of those noun project icons, right? You can build these on top of an existing image and make your own infographic. It's pretty easy. This is a sustainable school that we did in Staten Island, 100% off the grid, water and electricity. So you can use infographics. So you guys are engineers, right? Some of us in the room. We like charts, graphs, other things. These are all great. They're super easy to manipulate inside of PowerPoint, but they're not the most exciting thing that people can look at. Again, if this is a graph, it's not telling me the mechanics of said graph, right? And what the X and Y axes mean or anything like that. It's what is that graph telling me? And that's the only point you need to make in the 5 seconds you have a slide in a slideshow, right? And never use pie charts. I don't know, that's my pet peeve. You can use pie charts if you want, but I really don't like pie charts. So for instance, this is a schedule for a project I'm working on right now that I would never put on a PowerPoint slide because it's never going, there's no way I'm going to communicate how this makes any sense, nor is it meant to communicate any one thought in a quick frame, right? So don't put something like that up and try to explain your graph ever. If you do, make it something simple that you can just say in like literally 5 seconds what the point of that graph is next, right? So don't do that. So all of that was condensed into one infographic that I made very quickly. I do have some ability to use Illustrator. I'm not as good as my wife at any of this stuff, but I can piece some things together. So this says the same thing, right? All to illustrate the point of just get your point across. This is the process that we're going through right now in downtown Bakersfield. Next point. I've seen a lot of these in presentations, and you can have bullet lists, and that's fine, but there's 2 things you want to do. Never turn around and read something like this. If you guys are reading it right now, that's fine, because I'm communicating something, and it's communicating something, all to get the greater point across, right? But never put a paragraph on a screen. Rarely does anyone want to read during a PowerPoint presentation, so please don't read this slide. This is probably the biggest block of text I've ever put on a PowerPoint slide. This is for a work planning team meeting that I do for this is downtown Bakersfield, real quick. I'm going to use this slide over a couple times moving forward. I don't read what the point of the work planning team is. I go, we all remember why we're here, right? You're the litmus test and you're going to help us through this engagement process. That's all they need to know. But if they wanted to read what they agreed to when they signed off on the work plan, you can kind of put those things in there to reinforce your idea. And that's about as far as I would recommend you take it. I did not develop this map. That is clearly a city GIS map. And I wanted to make a couple points. So PowerPoint's also really good to do very quick and dirty analyses. I don't always recommend it, but this took me about 5 minutes. And what point do you think I'm trying to make with all these reds in downtown Bakersfield? These are all surface parking lots. These are all soft sites that we could potentially do development with if and when they build a high-speed rail station right there, right? So there's a cluster. Quick and easy, made a point, and that was it. I think people get really caught up when they go, oh, but there's a district up here and we can connect these and I want to convey this message, and then there's these sort of landmarks that we want to put together and do all this other kind of stuff. And I really want to highlight this right here, and before you know it, you have nothing but a cluster of nothingness, right? So stay away from word art. They're really not very graceful images that they've built into PowerPoint, both word art or any of the sort of images that you can put onto it. I've used a couple here just to kind of illustrate that, if you do it, don't go overboard, because it can get
GIS for that?
the map,
To do the layers, yeah.
the base map, but all of this was in,
File or?
this is just it's just a JPEG that they've made from a shapefile, yeah. So it's an aerial image with a layer, one layer, two layers, because there's some dots on there too. So all of that is to illustrate that you got to be careful when you're using word art. Don't get carried away. Never embed a video. People love doing this, and I've seen more than successful videos, people spending 10 minutes trying to load their video, right? So just don't do it. There's no reason to. I mean, there really is none. If you want a video and you want to direct them to that website, they can look at it later. This usually ends in a catastrophe. And that's kind of the other point about PowerPoints, is the simpler you keep it, the less opportunity there is for something to go wrong. And that's, I mean, both in the way you communicate that PowerPoint. So like, for instance, if I put this up there and I stood there and I read this whole thing, I don't know what you guys are doing. Somebody's about to throw a pencil at me. And then before I end it, I forget what point I'm trying to make after reading all this, right? And then you go, you have a big brain fart, you forget what you were going to talk about, and you get lost in your own thoughts because you just spent 10 minutes reading a paragraph. So, clear and concise is the rule of the day. Those are just some of my quick tips. I have some more sort of fine-grained, very detailed, nitpicky things that I wanted to quickly go over. You can take them or leave them for whatever purpose. Fonts and sizes, you guys have a template, so you don't have to worry about that. But you want to make sure, because like for us at SOM, we have the font that we like to use in all of our documents that nobody else in the world has. So every time I try to load that font onto someone else's computer, it always gives me some gobbledygook and it changes the sizes, and then my whole PowerPoint's all messed up. So stick with Arial. Everybody has Arial, right? Or Arial Bold if you want to get exciting. Practice makes perfect. Yes, I did finish this presentation about 10 minutes before I showed up, but this morning I practiced my rough draft 2 or 3 times just so I could kind of get the flow, right? And I think that little bit of effort that you put into being prepared for a PowerPoint presentation really makes a big difference. So practice makes perfect. The other thing you want to do is you always want to run through your PowerPoint once before you give it publicly. I've been in like interviews before where we're like working on our final interview presentation that we want to give to the very last second. We're dropping in new images and we're doing all this other kind of stuff. And then we project it on a screen, and like 5 of the images we just threw in have terrible resolution and they're all pixelated. And here we are, SOM, trying to look all fancy, and we have pixelated images in our interview presentation. So you always want to go through it once for all those little tiny things, because those little errors, especially if you keep it simple, really stick out. This is a PDF that I made from the PowerPoint. I never, ever, ever, ever open PowerPoint and give the presentation. I always save it as a PDF and put it up there, because there is nothing that can go wrong with this PDF. Unless you don't have a PDF reader, then I'm really screwed. So I recommend saving as a PDF. I'll add really quickly, though, another small tidbit. If you have like a key that you put it in there and you open it from the key, you can corrupt that file too, so always drag it to your desktop. That's another very small thing. You can screw up a lot of stuff just by opening it from the key. So always drag it to the desktop and then open it. Save as PDF. I am not following this rule. Usually you always want to bring a backup computer because that one will always go wrong. So make sure you have a backup. Presentation, computer, key, the whole thing, just in case. You don't want to get stuck at City Hall and look like a fool. Some of you beat me here, which I apologize for. Usually I'm the first person in the room when I'm giving a presentation, just so I can get all the things set. You want to have your title slide up before anybody else walks in the room. And then you look like a professional. But I think the biggest point that I could make across this entire whole sort of quick and dirty presentation about PowerPoint 101 is really it's about embracing who you are and what your style is, or maybe even finding what your style is. So I'm relatively affable, gregarious, or whatever, and hopefully that came across just in my presentation. This is just me being me, right? So you need to find out who you is and then put that in your presentation and just go up and don't try to be. I always see like PowerPoint, someone's trying to be somebody else up here, right? They're trying to be a better version of themselves, or be a Tony Robbins, or be, whatever, right? Like, it's much more authentic and genuine if you just get up and do what you do. And if you're an engineer and you want to just kind of go through some stuff, that's fine. Just make sure your points are clear and concise. I forgot to run through these. So, same thing, different thing. Stephen Curry, anybody? All right, I remember that game. And just very quickly, applications. Again, we talked about this a little bit before, but when I spoke with Bridget about a week ago when we were talking about what this could be and what this would be, what we want this to be about, it was really about, apparently you guys do a lot of communication with each other, either to senior staff or even like collaboratively across, I was going to say departments, but what do you guys have? Divisions, right? Externally, when you either go over to City Hall or giving some committee some presentation, or more importantly, or for at least from my perspective, most importantly, it's about the public presentations moving forward. So everybody basically almost requires now a PowerPoint presentation when you go out into the public. And so you guys got the template. Hopefully you got a little bit of wisdom, and just make sure you're being clear and concise when you're moving forward. And that's it. That's me. Thank you.